Gabon, the government will launch a new urban transport company that will employ 500 people. The Gabonese government aims at dealing with unemployment issue and that of urban transport in the capital, which has for years stood as a pin in the neck of the country's development. In Mali, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta raises the tone of his voice to demand the end of inter-ethnic conflicts. President announces strong measures and promises confiscation of illicit weapons. These are our top stories. Stay tuned for more details in this newscast. Among the decisions following the cabinet meeting held in June 13th in Gabon was that on creating an urban transport company called Transurb, one extra company, even though the existing Sogatra, the Gabonese company of transport, is in agony. According to the final statement of this cabinet meeting, the creation of this second urban transport company aims to improve the public mass transport offer. The company is equipped with a fleet of 300 buses in its startup phase, with the creation of 300 direct jobs and 200 indirect jobs over time. Of course, one wants to gloat and sigh in relief, but we are quickly caught up by the reality and the show offered by the previous transport company, Sogatra. Buses are broken down or abandoned altogether on public roads or at the company's headquarters, parked along the public road and garage areas specialized in large carriers. This is the visible part of the iceberg, which reflects an unorthodox management of the accounting of the public enterprise and several billions of CFA francs which were embezzled in 2018. It is therefore on what could be described as the last jolts or ups and downs of Sogatra that the Transurb is created. A desired solution to the tricky issue of urban transport in Gabon, even if, in the light of course of its predecessor, one could be a little skeptical, especially with regard to its material and financial management. The company Transurb should therefore allow, on the one hand, to respond effectively to the strong demand of the demographic explosion of the big city of Libreville, on the other hand, to improve the fluidity of traffic with the limitation of the use of individual vehicles. Mali's President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta rejects any notion of inter-ethnic conflict. The president says his government will disarm all those who illegally possess weapons and punish anybody who refuses to comply. He made the pledge during a trip to a Dongon village in the middle of the massacre where 35 people were killed on Monday, 24th, of whom were children. The death toll was initially reported as 95, but later reduced. A similar pledge was made by Mali's government in March, but they have so far struggled to disarm militias. The president of Mali promised the confiscation of illicit weapons in the center of the country struck by violence among communities. Hundreds of people have been killed in violent clashes between Dongon hunters and Fulani herders since January, and there are several Islamic groups based in the north of Mali from where they launch attacks. Bishop Zebo, present at this field visit, prayed for the victims in the presence of the head of state in this village where the population is mainly composed of Catholics, while the Malians, all communities combined, are predominantly Muslim. Since the jihadist group's appearance in the region in 2015, there has been a growing number of clashes between communities and the Bambara and Dogon ethnic groups, mainly farmers, who have created their self-defense groups. Ousted from power and arrested last April under pressure by protesters, the former head of state Omar el-Bashir, Sudanese former strongman, has just been charged with corruption by Sudanese justice after his dismissal on April 11th, and several other charges still hung over his head. Prosecutor's office announces completion of all investigation into legal action against the former president by anti-corruption prosecutors. The former president was accused of possessing foreign currency, having acquired wealth in a suspicious and illegal way, and for having ordered the state of emergency on May 2nd. The Attorney General of Sudan ordered the hearing of the former head of state under the laws on money laundering and terrorist financing, according to the SUNA. On April 21st, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, head of the Transitional Military Council, claimed that the equivalent of more than $113 million had been seized in cash at Omar el-Bashir's residence in Khartoum. Sudanese justice also announces the former president's indiction for killing demonstrators following a complaint filed after a doctor's death during protests in Khartoum. The Attorney General recommends speeding up investigations into the murders of other protesters. At the time, the death toll since December had risen to 90, according to the protesters, but only 65 people were killed, according to the authorities. The transfer of Omar el-Bashir to courts and other persons mainly responsible for killings under the alleged regime remains one of the highlights of the claims. In Madagascar, for the 8th edition of the International Tourism Fair, the ITM 2019, the organizers had prepared a large event with an exhibition space up to 30,000 square meters against 15,000 for the previous edition. With the primary aim of developing Madagascar's tourism, the International Tourism Fair Madagascar 2019, supported by a detailed program of the government, will focus on new prospects for the development of the tourism sector. It will highlight the great tourism potential of the Big Highland through its exceptional natural heritage, its rich and diverse culture. This change of site implies the increase of the number of exhibitors and will allow a massive participation of operators coming from other regions, a discovery of offers and services within the reach of all communities, but also the provision of a large space favoring B2B meetings. The ITM show has progressively become a meeting point in the planning of major events of the Vanilla Highlands. This 10th edition will be a new opportunity for meetings between tourism professionals and opportunity to exchange with their potential customers in one place. In Gabon, the government will launch a new urban transport company that will employ 500 people. The Gabonese government aims at dealing with unemployment issue and that of urban transport in the capital, which has for years stood as a pin in the neck of the country's development. In Mali, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta raises the tone of his voice to demand the end of inter-ethnic conflicts. President announces strong measures and promises confiscation of illicit weapons. That's all for our newscast today. Stay tuned on Gabon 24 for more news.